continuing our conversation, this topic called Unorthodox, and we've been looking at Jesus' life and his interactions with people, and really just taking a look at how everything that he did was unorthodox. It confronted the culture of his time. It confronted expectations. It confronted everything about his day and age. And what's fascinating about him is that his life is still what causes people to be really uneasy. His name causes people to be uneasy. We can talk about any name in the world, but the moment we start talking about Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, people are like, just get awkward sometimes. Not all the times, but sometimes they just get awkward because they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what to do with him. And so what better way to confront the awkwardness than just to confront it and talk about him? So that's what we've been doing. And I'm not going to recap everything because we don't have the time for it. But last week we began with a prayer that Jesus introduced. And it comes at the point when Jesus, it's called the Sermon on the Mount, when he is going through all kinds of various teachings and about forgiving and about an eye for an eye and all of those kinds of things. And so it's in that same thread that he introduces this prayer to his listeners. And I can recap it real fast. The beginning of that prayer, I'm going to not paraphrase it, but I'm going to speak it in the way that it would be translated for us today. So this is what Jesus was saying. Hey, Dad in heaven, make your name holy. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. I'm going to stop right there because we're going to talk about that middle section to the last section of what I just stated. This was so interesting to their understanding because God he always had these titles. God of Jacob, God of Abraham, the God of our fathers, all of these things. But Jesus says, this is how I want you to pray. I want you to approach the all-knowing, all-powerful one, the one who caused everything to be. Call him Dad. And right there, he probably lost like half of them. They're like, this is just too casual, Jesus. It's just too casual to say, hey, Dad, to God Almighty. But that's the tone, that's the heart, that's the demeanor that Jesus is inviting us to approach God with. Hey, Dad, in heaven. That's quite a paradox, right? Hey, Dad, in heaven, make your name holy. And so that's all we talked about last week. You can listen to it on our website if you want to. This week we're going to pick up where he goes on, and I'm going to say it in the original Greek. I'm not going to speak Greek. I'm just going to say, in the flow, it would read like this. Let it come, your kingdom. Let it be done, your will, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Now, in that section of Scripture, there are some things at work that that I just want to speak to that is hard to put words to, but this is what's going on in our mind. The first thing that I want to speak to, though, is how Jesus starts the prayer. He says, our Father, or our Dad. We need to understand that when Jesus is introducing this prayer, he's not in a one-on-one meeting with somebody where he says, okay, repeat after me, my Father, my Dad in heaven, make your name holy, yada, 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 and then give me today my daily bread. I think sometimes we pray the Lord's Prayer in an individualistic lane, where it's just for me. But that's not it. Jesus, from the very beginning, he says, this is how you are to pray. Our Dad. Our Dad. That's important for us because we live in a culture that is very individualistic. It's very selfish. We live in a selfish world. Just saying. We could go through and look at all of the things that are part of our lives. You look at cars today, and you look at, especially like the ones, and if you have one of the cars that has all the bells and whistles, this isn't like a slam on you or anything. There are things that we can enjoy in life, but you think about what's at our fingertips. Like I love it whenever I rent from Enterprise because I get the latest model of Chevy, or specifically Chevy, because they have the CarPlay where you just plug your phone in and it's like, boom, it synchronizes to your phone. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I can operate my phone from the car. This is crazy. and it's all at your fingertips. And so, but that's tailored for me, for my convenience, for my ease of life. And there's so much in our lives and in our culture that caters to me, right? It caters to me. Restaurants are another one where it used to be McDonald's was just cheeseburgers and fries. Well, because they want to make people happy, now they've got fish. Well, not now. I mean, they've had it forever, right? It's like, oh my gosh, you're like 20 years behind the schedule. But they just start keep coming out with new stuff to cater to people. And then they used to close the restaurants. Now they're 24 hours in case you feel like going out in obscure hours. I know some people work through the nights, and it's nice to have a 24-hour restaurant, but it didn't used to be that way. And so our culture caters to the individual. It probably wasn't much different. It just looked a little bit different because clearly they didn't have McDonald's and they didn't have cars and stuff like that, but it was very individualistic. And so Jesus is saying, our dad. This is a group, this is truly a family here. Our dad. Our dad. We need to pray that way. I think sometimes my prayers get really, really self-centered and self-focused. And I want to lift up to him the things that are going on in my life and the things that concern me. I don't care about the rest of the world. They can pray for themselves. And it's just a poor way to pray. So, our dad in heaven, make your name holy. Let it come, your kingdom. Now, this also brings up some interesting thoughts. I'm going to say some things that are really basic, but I think that we get too comfortable with the truth of these statements. God's kingdom existed prior to any earthly kingdom. God's kingdom will keep existing far beyond any kingdom that ever has been. We know this by word, and we know this intellectually, but in a general sense, I don't want to put this on you, so let me just wear this one, okay? I know for me that I think that my kingdom that I try to build and support, if you will, I try not to live selfishly kingdom-minded, but I do, I'm a human. I live as if my life and the mark that I leave on this planet will outlast God. And it's just not. So we serve a God, we have a God, there is a God whose kingdom was before and it will be way beyond after. But if we read history books, we can see that men throughout history have been chomping at the bit to define their kingdom. Alexander the Great, Hitler. I mean, there's good ones and there's bad ones. There's all kinds of kings and rulers who have tried to set up their dominion as if it could not be tampered with. And how silly it is that there's people that go to great lengths, and there are leaders who have wiped out masses of people for the sake of establishing their kingdom. And guess what? They died. And their kingdom was handed over to somebody else. This is really important for us, and this is important what Jesus is introducing. Let it come, your kingdom. Here are three historical perspectives. There's three basic ones that are held by us. And these kind of form our thinking and how we approach life and how we approach God. This is they didn't put a year on this, but this is kind of a more recent view of history, is that history is meaningless. There's no point to it. It's just nonsense. It's nothingness. We're just living life and there's no purpose behind it, and we can do whatever we want to do because it's not going to be remembered and there's no significance to our life. Therefore, history is meaningless. Anybody that lives that way lives a deeply depressing life. That's personally my opinion, just opinion only, but I can't fathom how would they know what happiness is if there's no meaning behind happiness, right? If there's no meaning behind any of this that's going on, then what's the point in being happier? Let me make it more personal to myself. The reason why I know that there's meaning in history is because there's meaning in the food that I eat. I'm just saying, I really love steak, and how would I know to love it and to crave it, and how would I know that it's good? I know that some people are not meat eaters, and that's fine. We'll pray for you, but that I know that has very little to do with the big picture of history, but there's good things that we get to participate in and that we get to enjoy in this life. Why? It's not a sick joke. I'm going to throw you into nothing that means nothing, but you can enjoy the nothing that you're a part of. That makes no sense. And all the striving that you're doing, it means nothing. This life that you're wanting to live, it means nothing. Like that, it just doesn't register in a sensible mind. And I hope that's not offending anybody. If it is, then I'm sorry, genuinely. The second view is that history is a series of events moving in circles. History repeats itself. Now, the Bible even talks about this, where it's God who allows kings and kingdoms to rise and fall. And the different reasons why those kingdoms rise and fall are really determined by God, but there's cycles in life. And if we read our history books, we see this. We see kingdoms rise and we see kingdoms fall, and there's a cycle and a rhythm to it. Then there's a third one, where history, and particularly his kingdom, is an arrow that moves toward what the Bible calls the day of the Lord, which is the capital THE, the last day. And so history is an arrow that is moving forward to that day. Now, what we have to do, we have to take our concept or our philosophy, our view of history, and we have to mash it together with our view of the kingdom of heaven. Now, what I've said already is that we live with the mindset that our kingdom is going to last forever, when, in fact, it's just a blink of an eye. I mean, Myrtle Epler, if you didn't have the chance of meeting her, sweet, sweet woman, she lived to be 100 years old. That's a long time. That's more than the average, we all know this. But 100 years is a blink of an eye in the scope of eternity, in the scope of God's kingdom. And everything that Myrtle worked for, and I know the investment in other people's lives, that's one thing, but the materials, guess what? Doesn't mean anything. The materials that she has doesn't mean anything anymore. It's a brutal statement, but you guys get what I'm saying. But we have a tendency of living for the stuff and living for the reputation and living for the confidence within ourselves and all these kinds of things, and that isn't it. That's not kingdom. This was confronting a mindset that is still our issue today, where Jesus is saying, hey, I want you to pray like this. I want you to pray, Father, Dad, your kingdom come. Get my mind focused on that. Get my heart there. Get my head there. I want to be focused on your kingdom, not these micro kingdoms that I think are so powerful and important. Let it come, your kingdom. Now, here are some different statements about his kingdom. His kingdom is full of paradox. Jesus, the Son of the living God, came, and he was, literally, we sing about him being heaven on earth. He was God's representative, his Son on earth, and he healed, he touched people, he set people free, he restored people, he gave sight to the blind. There's all of this stuff. He was a representation, a reflection. He was literally the kingdom of heaven on earth. And yet, the same kingdom is still in the future. So he came as the kingdom of heaven. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. Yet it's still to be experienced. Another paradox is that it's kind of in that same fold is the kingdom is near, yet far. The reason why I love worship and the reason why I sit on the front row and I have my hands up and I'm just, it's like me and the worship team. I love that we're all together, but I don't care in the moment of worship that y'all are behind me, because I just love lifting up His name. And I look forward to the day where my voice sounds like, I don't know guy vocals very well, but I can't wait for my voice to sound like it's supposed to sound, like powerful, whatever my eternal voice is going to sound like, and just worship God. And so I experience His presence, and it's very, very near, and yet the kingdom of heaven is far. How is that? The third one that is pointed out is that we are given signs of when the kingdom of heaven will come. You know, when I'm talking about the last day, yet we will never really ever know. And here's what's crazy about that thought, is that understanding of the kingdom of heaven that thought has disrupted culture more often or more times than we would like to admit. We have a calendar that has been crafted by some guy hundreds of years ago that people they plan their life around this calendar. That they're watching all the popes and everything. I'm like, why don't you just read the Bible? And that's just me. But people have made decisions because they thought Jesus was coming. Anybody remember Y2K? Y'all remember this? The year 2000? Oh my gosh! Get all that you can get. I'm not making fun, okay? My dad and stepmom, they turned our toy room that I grew up in, okay, into a bomb shelter. And there was so many months of supply of green beans and all kinds of stuff that I never ate to begin with. And so they were happy about it. They were like, you go upstairs and see the Y2K room. And I'm like, are you for real? So I would go up there, and wall to wall, everything there inside the room, there's just cans and cans and cans of just stuff that you could eat for days, for months. What happened when the year 2000 rolled over? Nothing. Nobody got teleported to heaven. Nothing. The world didn't stop rotating. The end did not come. That's the one that I lived through. Some of y'all might remember 2 or 3 of those. We're given these hints and we're given these words of when Jesus' return will happen, yet we will never know. I don't think it's a bad thing that we're preparing that way. My take on it is that Jesus just wants us to be so focused and fixated on Him that we're kind of like, it's not that we're whatever about everything that's going on. I don't think that we need to overplan our departure, though. You know what I'm saying? I think when He comes, we're just going to be like there, and just, it's going to be nuts in my verbiage. This is nuts. Hey, Jesus, this is nuts, man. I mean, Jesus, this is nuts. This is crazy. Our heart, our focus, our desires, our dreams, everything really is constructed around our understanding of the kingdom of heaven. Why are we here? Why are you here if you didn't have some kind of hope in the kingdom of heaven? Well, I just believe in Jesus. Well, Jesus is part of the kingdom of heaven. I was just here because I had nothing else to do. Well, I'm glad you landed here, but we're talking about the kingdom of heaven. This hope that we have, it should shape our life in a massive way. And that's what Jesus was trying to get into them. Hey, Dad, in heaven. Make your name holy. Let it come, your kingdom. Let it come. Your will, let it be done. This one here is probably one of the more swirling, confusing conversations with anybody to have when we talk about the will of God, right? Well, let's just throw cancer. Let's throw abuse. Let's throw all these different unexpected events in our life. And I've heard this countless times with people. Was that God's will? Was that pain God's will? Well, let me just allude to one story of pain. Was Jesus dying on the cross part of God's will? Absolutely. Now, I'm not saying, this is where it gets murky and messy. I'm not saying that all pain that we go through is God's will. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is we live in a confusing and broken world, and our eyes are ever to be focused on Jesus. And there are just some questions that we won't get the answers for. And we won't ever get to land on them. All I know is that Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God. And there are loads and loads of things that take place and happen to other people, both good and bad, that I don't understand. I don't understand why some people get healed of cancer or healed from it, or why some don't. I don't understand all of why that happens to them and not to them, or whatever it would be. I don't know. This is what can be understood about the will of God, is that in a general sense, in a wide paintbrush stroke kind of tone, the will of God is his desire for the good of all his people. We want to slice it any way. I don't care how we slice it. His ultimate will is that good would fall and rest on his people. That's his heart. That's his hope. Now, this is where it gets tricky, is that we can understand this in an earthly term. If you have a kingdom, that kingdom has a king. Generally speaking, that would be our expectation. There's a king in that kingdom. We don't have to wonder what his hopes are if they are stated, right? If he's like, these are my expectations, there's no questioning what his will is, because he dictates that will, right? We understand that in a physical sense. How much more should that be applied to the king of the kingdom that was before all and will be after all? This is our arrogance. Wait, I do that a lot. Sorry. This is my arrogance. Sometimes I have the audacity to dictate what his will is. Me, one that he created, I'm telling him how he ought to be. Makes sense, right? But I do it. I tell him what's fair, what's not fair, what should be done, what shouldn't be done. I do it all the time. His kingdom come. His will be done. And here's what's fascinating. Jesus could have just put a period right there. But he makes it a wee bit more awkward for us by saying, on earth as it is in heaven. Well, what's the difference? Why would that need to be stated? Well, because the way things function here on earth are vastly different than the way it functions in heaven. There are no more tears. There is no more brokenness. There is no more hurt or pain or sadness. It's perfect. We are perfectly in the presence of the living God. And there are no hindrances to his moving in heaven. So when Jesus says, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, what Jesus is saying is, God, move with no strings, no hindrances, no hesitations, nothing inhibiting. Well, he's God. Nothing can inhibit him. And that's where the will conversation comes back in. Because even though it's his will, it was his will to give us free will. And our free will can create a lot of mess. My free will causes a lot of mess. And I'm not saying this as if I can control and manipulate God, but I know that my sinfulness can inhibit or prohibit his move. Maybe specifically to a specific moment. On a grand scale, his will is still going to be done. You get how it gets confusing, right? It gets hard to land somewhere. But if we ever fully think that we've landed and we've figured God out, it's kind of dangerous. I want him and his ways and what he's created always to be a mystery. That's why I love Paul, what he says. I just resolved to this, to know Jesus and him crucified. Period. All right. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Before we get into that, this earth, what I love about what Jesus introduces here is that this is not a singular person prayer. Our Dad in heaven, make your name holy. Your kingdom come, your will be done on the globe as it is in heaven. See, this is the significance of the prayer. Our individual lives matter, but our prayers can be so self-focused that we lose sight of the bigger picture. So God, what I want to do, our God in heaven, make your name holy. Your kingdom come, your will be done in human trafficking. Your kingdom come, your will be done with drug and sex addictions. Your kingdom come, your will be done in the attack against the values and the understanding of marriage. You see how this isn't limited to, Lord, these are important. What I'm about to pray, it's important. Lord, I just pray over Uncle David that he would just know you, and like that's important. But this is a world prayer. He wants our heart to go to the world. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. So this prayer that Jesus is praying and introducing is your kingdom come, your will be done over these global issues on earth as it is in heaven. And I love this introduction because it takes the self out of it and it helps us engage in a more wide narrative that we can step in and stand in prayer over the things that are going on in this world. And here's our challenge, my challenge is I feel like, well, my prayer doesn't mean much. It doesn't carry much weight. But from what I read, from what David wrote, it's like he was adamant about God hearing him. God, bend your ear to me. Hear my prayers. Prayer isn't meant to be some obstacle that we overcome and fight for it to be a part of our life. It should just be as natural as breathing. As natural as breathing, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I'm preaching to myself on that one because I get frustrated whenever I meet people and it's like, clearly I have no prayer life. Not only do I need to improve it, I just don't feel like I have one because of how that person prays. Anybody ever meet somebody like that? I mentioned the name Myrtle. I heard stories of her and her husband praying at summer camps, and people would be all the kids would be like in their dorms or in their cabins sleeping, and some of the people that watch at night, they would walk by Myrtle's. They had a trailer, and she and her husband would be on their knees in their trailer interceding and praying for those children and for those kids, and also praying for the nations. Get to know people like that. Let them rub off on you. Learn to pray. Your Kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. No hindrances, God. Let there be no hindrances. This is what I mentioned in the first service. Really what this is an invitation for is if we don't want there to be any hindrances, we're inviting him to really have access to a heart check in us. If nothing's going to be hindered, then Lord, you're welcome to purify me. You're welcome to free me of sin. You're welcome to do whatever you need to do so that I'm not the hang-up in what I'm praying for. That's a more theological depth conversation to have than just, anyways, we can talk about that another time. Because I don't want anybody to think, well, that person didn't get healed of their cancer because I have sin in my life. Don't think that. Okay? All right. Give us this day my daily bread or our daily bread? It's our. Okay, so it's not selfish anymore. This isn't about, Lord Jesus, I pray that you would give me today my Wendy's Happy Meal, my food. Give us this day our daily bread. I didn't think there's anything spectacular about this. I just thought it is what it is. Give us today what we need to survive. Okay, I got it. But the word daily bread, there's a Greek word, very, very interesting, that has never been used in any other Greek literature. It was like even the ruler's name Origen, he didn't even know this word. But it's a Greek word. I'm not going to say it for you because you didn't come to a Greek class. But daily bread has never been used before. It's like Jesus made up a word. And this is what it means. Give us today the bread that does not run out. What is that all about? Did you know that whether we'd like to admit it or not, there is a underlying motive behind everything that we do, especially as it pertains to our occupation. We like to talk about what's your dream or what's your dream job, all this kind of stuff. But really, we start out just wanting a job, right? And why do we want a job? We want a job so we can pay the bills, so we can put food on the table, those sort of things. And so what Jesus is saying is he's introducing a prayer to them where fear of not eating will no longer dictate their life. Give us this day our bread that does not run out. You might think I'm a bit extreme on this, but there are families who move across the country for a job. And why is that job important? Because it provides for their family. There are some families who operate paycheck to paycheck because, they just do. They just operate that way. There are some families who will skip a few meals because all their funds have gone to other things, and they just had to miss a meal. Some people make decisions for their families that lead them down roads that they shouldn't be going down because they fear not having what they need. And what Jesus is saying is ask your dad for your bread that does not run out. I bet you anything, their minds were blown the first time that Jesus grabbed that Happy Meal from the kid and fed 5,000 people from a little Happy Meal. Don't fear. He's got you. You lean into him, he's got you. What's fun is just being a preacher and getting to look out and just know that there's just, I'm not going to single out anybody because I want anybody to be like, oh, what went on in their life? But it's just cool. I'll look up when I say this. It's just cool how we've seen God provide in miraculous ways. If we just go to him, Lord, give us this day our bread that doesn't run out. And I'll tell you why there's no greed in that prayer is because he didn't pray, Lord, give us this day my daily cake. This is need now. This isn't want. It didn't say ice cream. It didn't say anything else that we could have thrown in there. It was, give me what I need to sustain, to live. He is our confidence. And his heart for us is that we would not make decisions based upon fear, that we wouldn't make decisions based upon food, but that we would make decisions that we would live by faith in him. Hey, Dad in heaven, make your name holy. Let it come, your kingdom. Let it be done, your will, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our bread that does not run out. We're going to stop there this morning. I encourage us to do this today. I want to lead us to a place where we get outside of ourselves. The question, I was even intentional on how to ask it. I wanted to make sure that there was no me or I in this question. But it's simply this: in what areas of life do you want do you want his kingdom to come and his will be done? I didn't say what areas of my life or what areas of your life. I just put what areas of life. I want us as a church, this is probably the only Sunday that I'll invite this. Every week we have prayer requests that are put on there about family members and everything like that. If you've already done it, no big deal. But I want us not to focus on what's so close to us. I want us to pan out a little bit. I want us to get global in our prayer this morning. And so if of the things that I've listed out this morning, human trafficking, sex and drug addictions, marriage, the agendas that are clearly out there of like just deconstructing our values, I want us as a church to get outside of the walls of our church, even outside of the walls of our county. And I want us to identify some things, some areas of our life, of our day, where we want to see the kingdom of heaven come. Can we do that today? Does that make sense? I'm essentially just asking ourselves to be selfless and not just look to our own needs within the context of our own families. So I'm going to be quiet, and I want you to just write some things down. God, let your kingdom come and your will be done in this thing or in this challenge. All right? Grab a pen, grab a connection card, and go at it.